Sekeres and Price from Wall Center Presentation Applewood Auto Group, joined now by Rinkwide's Jeff Paterson, our Vancouver Canucks reporter who saw the game last night in Seattle. Jeff, are you the one who managed to figure this out?
And Grady.
Yeah, well, a little help from Grady. I got to the game about 5 minutes in, so I think I missed a Vasily Podkolzin penalty was about. That was the extent of it. Otherwise, I had a pretty good stream. And
good.
Yeah, so no, I watched the game and watched the Seattle Kraken look a whole lot faster and quicker than the Vancouver Canucks. And Rick Tocchet agreed afterwards. And, that's kind of been the Kraken's MO since their arrival in the National Hockey League. And it seems every time they play the Canucks, whether it's preseason or regular season, they have a step on this Vancouver team. So we know, and we've heard Travis Green mention it, Bruce Boudreau, and I would think that Rick Tocchet would have to cop to it as well. The Canucks still are not a fast team. They're just not that's not an attribute when you think of the Vancouver Canucks. So preseason is for about making evaluations and judgments. And I think one of the things that Rick Tocchet would take out of Climate Pledge, forget the fact that it was 3-1 and that they're winless here through their first 3 games and that they've been outscored 15. Can you forget all of this? Just it's preseason, right? Sweep that part under the rug. But if it is the process, it's evaluation. And I could understand the coach didn't sound terribly happy with his team last night. And he had a number of National Hockey Leaguers in there. Again, harping on board battles and those types of things that he loves. But they're halfway through the preseason. And guys, let's be honest, week number 1 of the National Hockey League preseason for the Vancouver Canucks, not so good.
No.
They've got a lot of work in front of them here.
0-2-1, outscored 15-3. I'm just glad you've got a good stream. At our age, it's tougher to maintain. Sometimes they're choppy, broken up.
Terrible. But you know what? And we get into this discussion every single year, Jeff. Yeah. And the preseason to me is not about points. It's not about results and wins. But I think you do want a win just to remind yourself what it feels like. And I think you do want to see successes. You do want to see flashes of what you're trying to do. And I don't know that we have, we know we don't have wins here, but I don't know that we've really even seen flashes of extended good play to build off that. So in that regard, and only in that regard, the last 3 preseason games kind of matter here in terms of the process to get ready for the regular season, don't they?
Well, it's fascinating. I had somebody in my timeline come at me and make the point, imagine if Bruce Boudreau was the head coach and they were 0-2-1 and they had been bleached 10-0. Last year management was already starting the daggers at the head coach at this point, but they've got their guy in place. And so he's got a little more leash, obviously, but it did get me to thinking man, imagine if Bruce Boudreau was still around. I can't think that management would be terribly happy with what they have seen. So a couple of things. And it was quirky when it came out, but 3 road preseason games, all 3 road games out of the way now. They don't travel again until that first road game in Edmonton on October the 15th. So that's a ton of practice time for Rick Tocchet. And he and the coaching staff, they like their practice time. And quite frankly, they're going to need some practice time here because they've got a lot of things to work on as they continue to drill down on the systems and the style that he wants them to play. I would think the 2 games at Rogers Arena, Tocchet has talked about preseason games 4 and 6. Game 5, obviously, is in Abbotsford. We'll see what they do in terms of the type of roster that they send there. But yeah, I think there's a little bit of importance here. At home to the Oilers, at home to the Flames, Rogers Arena, paying customers, probably a lot of NHL regulars in the lineups for these 2 games on home ice. And, if they soil the sheets in those, then there probably is a little bit of angst in the market, given the storyline around the need for a quick start for the first time in a bunch of years. So let these games unfold. Let's see what happens here. But I would think in one of, if not both, you're going to see Elias Paterson and Andrei Kuzmenko as the top line and JT Miller and Brock Besser as a secondary line playing together. And so that they can start to, drill down on the power play and work on some of the real special teams. I don't know that the final game is necessarily a full-on dress rehearsal. I think some people always expect that you're going to ice your NHL lineup. I remember last year, Arizona came through here late in the preseason and mustered 7 shots on poor Thatcher Demko, and that was for the entire night. So, again, I don't know what Arizona was thinking. I'm not too worried about the Coyotes, but, that's what the Canucks got as their final preseason test or tune-up was a 7-shot effort from their opponents. So the Canucks just have to control what they can control, and we'll see if Tocchet ices a pretty good lineup. And I would think that you can have some expectations that he needs more from his best players. And quite frankly, we're in a territory now where this is last chance for some of these prospects 3 games to go. They're not going to play all of them. And so if you get called, if your number's on the board, you better make the most of your opportunity.
Full team day off today. Of course, back at it tomorrow at home against the Edmonton Oilers. Jeff will be joining you on Rinkwide. Answer me this, Jeff. Do they have a defense problem? Like, is anybody from this group of contenders for the third pair distinguishing themselves, or do you think they have an opportunity to look elsewhere to add a defenseman? Wolanin, Rathbone, Irwin, Hirose, McWard, Juleson, Brisebois, Wu. Has anybody distinguished themselves? Would you feel good about putting any of these guys on the third pair on opening night right now?
I joked on Sunday when the Canucks were getting bleached 10-0 in Calgary that it was a good night for Guillaume Brisebois and Christian Wolanin because they weren't guilty by association. They weren't in uniform that night. Yeah, I mean, Wolanin with a bad giveaway on what turned into the winner last night on the penalty kill. Now, if he makes the Vancouver Canucks, I don't think he's going to be doing a ton of penalty killing, but the Canucks want to see guys in all situations. And so it wasn't a banner night, I didn't think, for Wolanin. Guillaume Brisebois is what he is, and I think the Canucks recognize that. There's not a lot of flash to his game, but I still think he's in the running to make this hockey club, or at least be on the opening night roster. Cole McWard, I thought, was fine the other night in Edmonton alongside Quinn Hughes. I'm curious if they want to get another look at that, or if they move on to, what would that be, the fourth partner for Quinn Hughes after Juleson in the first day of camp, and then Carson Soucy, and then McWard in the preseason. So I think there will still be some experimentation. Does Ian Cole get a look alongside Quinn Hughes at some point? But yeah, I mean, we spent much of the summer after July 1st talking about, hey, the Canucks didn't have a lot of money to spend, but what money they had, they spent wisely. They beefed up their blue line. Filip Hronek was sort of the forgotten man because he didn't play. And here we are with 1 week left in the preseason, and people are starting to wonder, and I think worry a little bit about fleshing out this defense core and what's it going to look like on opening night. And Akito Hirose acquitted himself well in that disaster in Calgary. So, I want to get more of a look at him, and I think we will here in week 2 of the preseason. And so my hunch is that it's still open auditions, and you're looking at guys like Hirose and Wolanin on the left side, particularly, that have separated themselves from the pack. I think the others, a lot of the guys that you mentioned, they seem destined to start this season in the minors. Jack Rathbone just feels like a forgotten man at this stage of the proceedings. Philip Johansson, we haven't really seen or heard much of him. I think he's going to start the year down in Abbotsford. So I'm curious to see when the next round of cuts come and what that tells us about what the Vancouver Canucks are thinking. But again, 3 preseason games to go, still an opportunity for somebody to really put their best foot forward and cement one of those spots, 6 spots on opening night. Somebody's got to play defense for the Vancouver Canucks, and we'll see how the evaluation continues here in week 2.
Well, Lannon's an interesting study. I wish he was a right-hander. But, if you've got an AHL Defenseman of the Year in your organization, I'd certainly give him a long leash and test him at the NHL level. I felt like the gaffe last night, Jeff, I thought like he just mishit it. I don't think that was his decision to put it where it was. I think he just kind of lost it a little bit, lost control of the puck. So at least it wasn't a poor decision. It wasn't a full pizza, if you will. But I hope they give Wolanin a look, because, as I said, if you got an award-winning guy at the one level down, goodness, you'd think he was able to at least scratch the surface of an NHL season.
Well, and I think more than that, like, he won AHL Defenseman of the Year playing half the season. Like, he was called up and didn't look back at that point. And then on top of that, he's got, over the course of 6 or 8 years now, but a full season of NHL games under his belt with Los Angeles, with Ottawa. There was a brief cameo in Buffalo. He's bounced around a little bit, but he's logged NHL games that Akito Hirose just hasn't at this stage. And so I think they're high on Hirose, but I'm kind of with you that I just think that experience does have to matter at some point. And right now, Christian Wolanin, to me, with the season that he put in, or the half season at the very least last year, now a full-on tweener. Like, he's kind of graduated from the American Hockey League. It's just a question of, can he be an every night guy in the NHL? Right. Is he the extra defenseman in break glass in case of emergency, that kind of thing. So again, we'll see how it goes. I was really encouraged, and it's been this way from day one of training camp. I focused more on Ian Cole just because he's the newcomer. Just a veteran presence, calm, cool. Every time I noticed him out there, just seemed to be making the right play, small plays. and paired with Filip Hronek from day one. And look, the Canucks were outshot badly. They were outchanced badly. Seattle had all the analytics in their favor. And yet when Hronek was on the ice last night, the ice was tilted in the Canucks' favor. And so that's an accomplishment. Even in the preseason, it tells you that, they're spending far less time in their own zone defending than they are moving the puck up ice and generating offense. And I think that there is something to that pairing, even though I said I am curious if they look at Cole with Quinn Hughes at some point. I think the Canucks see Ian Cole and Filip Hronek as their second pairing. It's just a question of who's at the top of the food chain right now.
Yeah.
And that remains very much in a state of flux.
Jeff, Joshua, Dakota put on notice by talking earlier in the week. We both thought he responded reasonably well on Wednesday in Edmonton. Like your assessment of him yesterday in Seattle. And also talking mentioned a couple guys out of shape. We know Joshua's in his crosshairs for that. Have you noticed anybody else that looks like they're a step?
Before you get on Arrows and Ambitions, you meant Joshua, Dakota.
That's right.
Okay.
Right.
Yes. Look, to my eye, I haven't seen guys that were lagging. Remember last year, one of the storylines at a camp was Kuzmenko in his first NHL camp, always hunched over, trying to collect his breath. And then the first preseason game led the Canucks in average, shift length and those types of things. I haven't, but the coaches, they have the test results of the fitness testing, and they're closer to it at ice level. So, I haven't, but I thought that was curious, certainly. And in the same vein where Tocchet talked about we need big bodies and how much he liked Phil DiGiuseppe. That was one of the name checks coming out of the loss in Seattle. So Dakota Joshua tried to be physical early on, and then I kind of thought his game tapered a little bit, although clearly the coach saw something, because in the third period, he got a bit of a promotion and got to play with Pia Suter and Connor Garland. So Dakota Joshua and Sheldon Dries and Max Sasson, these are all guys that played them back to back. I think there were 6 guys that played back to back. Sasson and Joshua, though, have played all 3 of the preseason games so far. So there's got to be some method to the madness in that regard. I thought Garland and Suter, there's some undeniable chemistry. They combined on the only goal for the Vancouver Canucks last night. Connor Garland was the net front on the Hughes goal in Edmonton. I think Connor Garland, he was mixing it up with Joshua in the training camp last week. I think Connor Garland's had a pretty good week as things go for the Vancouver Canucks. When I looked at the game last night, Archie Bains continues you're drawn to him. And I use this as the entry point for Vasily Podkolzin, because I think this market wants it to happen for Archie Bains. I think the market wants it to happen for Vasily Podkolzin as well.
Sure.
But local kid, I don't think Archie Bains will be here when the dust settles to start the season, but I do think he's put himself on the map to play National Hockey League games. And how's he done it in the preseason? He's in on the forecheck. He's turning pucks over. He's, there's no quit. The hustle is on display. Like, he gets it. He's definitely a do something kind of guy here in the preseason so far. Why isn't that the case for Vasily Podkolzin? Podkolzin took an early penalty, and then he had a shot in the final minute of the hockey game, his only shot attempt of the night. And in between, all he did was wear the uniform. He's got to recognize that others are stepping up here, and he's just kind of, spinning his wheels a little bit. He doesn't have a spot on this team. He can be sent to the minors, and I just keep waiting for him. Blake, you talk about flashes, and it's just not there for him. And he's on the seat of his pants on the 1-0 goal, and I know there were breakdowns elsewhere before it got to him, but you could see the frustration, this recognition, oh no, they scored. I'm on the ice, and I'm literally on the ice. I'm sitting on the ice here. There just has to be more there, and the runway is shortening now, because unless he, I don't know if he's playing Saturday. I certainly don't know if he's playing Wednesday, but pretty good chance he's not going to get all 3 of the games that remain on the schedule here. So need to see more from Vasily Podkolzin, there's no doubt.
Yep.
And I need to see a recognition that some of the guys that he's battling with, and again, Tocchet, they didn't even play last night. And Tocchet name-checked Teddy Bluger and Jack Studnicka and Nils Amon after the game. That's sort of, I think, where the bar is set for some of those depth guys. And
Tocchet's a do something guy. Tocchet's buying into the do something.
Mm-hmm.
He's seeing guys do some things.
Studnicka's doing something,
and he likes it.
But on one level, guys, and with all due respect to Jack Studnicka, and it goes back to Torts and David Booth, the fact that we're midway through the preseason and Jack Studnicka has emerged as one of the good news stories for the Vancouver Canucks. Credit to him, but does he move the needle? Like, if he's in the lineup, ultimately, what does he do? Does he make the Vancouver Canucks a whole lot better? And I'm not convinced about all of those types of things, but he can control what he can control. And so credit to Studnicka for showing up in shape and showing us some hustle. But again, this team is supposed to be getting better incrementally. And the fact that Jack Studnicka sort of stands out as one of the best players from the first week of the preseason, it all rolls back into this idea that the first week of the preseason, it's had some speed wobbles along the way.
Good for Jack Studnicka, bad for everybody else. Lastly, Jeff, and Blake and I have kicked this around a little bit, and we don't necessarily know which direction they're going, so we may be a little bit premature, but they've experimented with different power play arrangements, not just personnel, but away from the 1-3-1 that has been so successful for them the last couple of seasons. For those who didn't see the game last night, and that is the vast majority, what did the power play look like? And what just philosophically is your take on potentially moving away for something that, let's face it, wasn't broken the last couple of years?
Yeah, I wouldn't be sounding any sort of alarms. Ultimately, it's hockey. And once you get into the offensive zone, I think guys are going to find their spots on the ice. And Tocchet's big on trying to create 2-on-1s. Obviously, you've got one extra player out there, so you try to find the mismatch and then exploit it from there. So if that means more down low work, I want to see more movement. I think the Canucks were guilty of being a little too static. I still am not thrilled with the idea of your best and most talented player being used essentially as a decoy. And remember, Elias Paterson had just 6 power play goals. Sheldon Dries had 6 power play goals last year. Like, they need more. They need more from Elias Paterson. And so I want him to have the puck on his stick. I want him to be closer to the net, to attack the net. And some of the work that they did when they rolled out special teams in Victoria last week, I think there were a few different looks, Matt. One is when they gain the zone on the entry on the rush as opposed to a face-off play, perhaps. And so maybe it depends on how do you sort of attack the zone and start with the puck. The other thing, too, is like there's nothing that says Elias Pettersson can't drop down low behind the net. Seems to me that Wayne Gretzky had some success setting up shot back of the net. The game has changed a little bit, but there's so many bodies and so many legs and sticks in front of the net that the idea of just get it back to the point for the one-timer, that doesn't necessarily work in today's National Hockey League, and that's why you see trying to finesse it to the bumper. That's why you see JT Miller fake it to the bumper and then attack the net on his downhill side, and he had some success there. So the personnel is certainly in place, and it does look like Brock Boeser is going to be the 5th player on the power play. Now, he doesn't replace Bo Horvat because Besser's a right shot, and Horvat obviously was a lefty, but I still wonder about some sort of setup where Elias Pettersson moves to the other side and JT Miller could slide to the interior as the bumper guy. Miller can shoot the puck, has pretty good hands. And again, you see a power play that's run through JT Miller the last couple of years, but why couldn't Elias Pettersson be the guy that's over on the left side that then has some options? And of course, Quinn Hughes up top being Quinn Hughes. And we talked about it post-game on Wednesday. Love the fact that Quinn Hughes scored on a bit of a seeing eye shot, but it was more the fact that Quinn Hughes had 8 or 9 shot attempts. I wonder if we're going to see a little bit more of that from Quinn Hughes, not just on the power play at evens as well, but trying to funnel more of his pucks through to the net and ultimately hope that a few go in.
I love your first suggestion. Honestly, behind the net, that is very Bill Belichick-y of you, Jeff. Like have that as a go-to moment. Pettersson gets the puck and goes down below the goal line. Like I think it would mess with the PK units. They wouldn't know what to do there.
But I think they'd adapt in time and perhaps in short order. I think one of the reasons why the behind the net play doesn't work as well is that defensemen are just more quick twitch athletes these days with more agility, better feet, and are able to sort of.
Doesn't have to be right behind the net, just below the goal line.
Okay.
And I wonder if it brings more shooting opportunities up top as they have to cheat down to you.
Next thing he's going to want to split the offensive lineman out wide
and deflate the puck.
You have to declare yourself eligible when you get on the ice. Remember,
if you got to be outside of the ineligible numbers to receive a pass. No, go ahead, Jeff.
Well, no, and just this collective, the brain trust. Tocchet is the head coach, but he's going to have the power play in his portfolio. But he's talked about leaning on Gonchar and Daniel and Henrik, and why wouldn't you? I mean, these are great advisors to have. So I'm kind of curious to see what the creative minds can come up with. Ultimately, though, it is hockey. The other team's going to have 4 defenders. It seems like a lot of teams have gone to this diamond formation now and try to keep you to the perimeter. And that's why it felt like Elias Pettersson was just too much of a decoy on too many nights last year. And I know that his one-timer is elite and it is a weapon, but it's also interesting to note that all 6 of his power play goals came after Rick Tocchet scored. Elias Pettersson didn't score a power play goal under Bruce Boudreau in the first half of last season, which is pretty remarkable considering Boudreau was here for 46 games before they made the coaching change. So, don't take the one-timer away. But again, if Elias Pettersson is in motion, if he's moving, get to a point where if he's down low, kind of swing out high and get Hughes to put the puck in his wheelhouse for a one-time opportunity, but just standing there static. I don't think that's the answer for anybody, particularly Paterson. But I want him to have the puck on his stick a little bit more
for sure
when the Canucks have the man advantage.
Marvelous stuff, Jeff. Thank you for this. I'll join you tomorrow on Rinkwide, and we'll catch up on Sekeres and Price on Monday. Thank you.
You and everybody else note that it's a 6:00 start Saturday home game. So that's good because it means Rinkwide can get out a little bit earlier. But kind of conditioned to 7:00 home games for this one, 6:00 Saturday night game.
This Sekeres and Price clip brought to you by Applewood Auto Group. And remember,
it's all good at Applewood.